Can you see me?
Yes, sir.
All right, all right, all right, all right, brother. Good stuff.
Hey, Paul, are you there?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
I'm trying to figure out how to turn the screen on though.
Oh, okay.
I've never seen it this small before with no buttons. Oh, I see it's down here. I tell you this stuff. Someday I'm gonna figure it out.
Thing is on recording, so get ready to get started in a minute. We'll give people a few more minutes. Brother Kenneth Vaughn, you still there?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. My man.
See what we got 1122 on the line. KB.
Yes, sir.
Okay, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Welcome, everyone, to Getting the Dross Off the Goal. Common Humanity Mission Incorporated presents Getting the Dross Off the Goal, Rediscovering Who You Really Are. The dross represents impurities. Those impurities deal with one's feelings, emotions, thoughts, attitude, language, and action. Common Humanity Mission Incorporated is a 501c3 nonprofit corporation that needs your support. Choose to donate. Cash App is $CH Mission. Your donation is tax deductible. We see on the flyer or the opening slide the leg support as it pertains to what one says and thinks when it comes to the theme. Getting the draws off the goal, rediscovering who you really are. Under the teaching of common humanity, it is to reclaim social solidarity. Because when you have respect, anything that comes at you or toward you will come at you with caution. Last week, we had a very powerful healing discussion. Anxiety disorder and trauma stress related disorders. Today, we will deal with depressive disorders and bipolar disorder. That which occupies the mind, conditions the mind. That's the nature of the mind. The dispute, last session, if it was as such, God and fear cannot occupy the same time or same space. But yet, someone says you need fear in order to prevent you from doing hurt, harm, or endangering another. We must not have a defeatist attitude or take a defeatist position. There is be no need for vacant or low self-esteem if we hold each other in high esteem. So we must move from victim to being victorious. I realized that there are three types of fears for me: intellectual fear, physical fear, and emotional fear. All are good is only in the misuse of every one of them. We must record our own history and gather our own data, come up with a solution to our problem as we identify it and associate it with a mental health. We must reason with progression and reason from the premise of conversation, reason with progression rather than regression. We must also be aware of distorted automatic thoughts, such as unfair comparison. This is associated with distorted automatic thoughts. We interpret events in terms of standards that are unrealistic. For example, you or I or may primarily focus on what others may do better than what we do. It's a saying, don't let the Jones get you down. It is an addiction, something that depresses you or I when we make those unfair comparisons. Remember, we were people that were charged with being inferior. And there is another automatic thought: what if? You keep asking yourself, or you get anxious about something, you can't catch your breath. You ask yourself something: what happens if you fail? And you fail to be satisfied when someone even give you an answer. What if? Then there is another distorted thought, automatic distorted thought, is emotional reasoning. What is emotional reasoning? Letting our feelings guide or interpret our reality. We must learn to process our thoughts, but not seeing ourselves as a threat to each other, that we continue to help aid and assist each other as we operate and function to the beat of the harmony, not into the rhythm of the harmony of being beat down. Common Humanity Mission DNA. We see here the social, cultural science is the basis of it. Technology, agriculturalists, industrialists. We were born to be productive industrialists. Agriculture, you see culture in there. And the rain falls from the sky and produce a crop. Productivity. We were created to be productive people. Promoters, cultivators, communicators, and have the opportunity to express appreciation for life. What to expect? You will be inspired, you will be informed, you will be enlightened, and you will be encouraged, and you will be empowered. Common Humanity Mission is to promote the value of self-worth is the mission. Our motto is to communicate with precision, a clearer image to the world through 5.5 channels of communication: understanding, tolerance, temperance/temperament, confidence, and respect. Our mandate is to cultivate the potential of knowledge that is in us all. The light that shines over the city. Our 4-point platform, people will speak from academic freedom, intellectual independence/interdependence, financial stability, and spiritual understanding. When I say intellectual independence, we're born dependent, then there is independence, and then there's interdependence. The stars, the moon, and the sun, they are in cooperation with one another. This is our social health model, our framework, the task, the effort, the time, the energy, and the nature. In the middle is the filtering out process, perceived susceptibility, advantages and disadvantages, perceived severity, health motivation, perceived benefits, open-mindedness, closed-mindedness, narrow-mindedness, perceived barriers, which means we deal with an imaginary hurt and we put up barriers. We create barriers that's not even there in our thinking and in our mind. We want to result in the results is to restore social credibility. We want to readdress social diversity. That's getting the draws off the goal. We are diversified people. When it comes to achieving and reaching one's aspiration, we want to provide social coherency, being coherent. We want to replenish the social continuity when it comes to flows and blockages, limitations, and accomplishments. In the result, reclaiming social solidarity. These would be the 4 keys to our success in this gathering, dialogue, discussion, and exchange. The need meeting period is designed to readdress the incentives of one's motive of intent, that we become properly motivated in furthering the value of becoming reacquainted with ourselves. The issue resolving period is designed to address the initiatives of one's determination of intent, that we expand the image of our worldview of properly further becoming reacquainted with ourselves. The problem solving period is designed to address the influences of one's environmental intent, that the devices won't hinder nor prevent us from properly reasoning from the premise of conversation and further becoming reacquainted with self. The question and answer period are designed to address indicators. What are the indicators of these mental illness and the health issues that we have? Of one's directive of intent, that by virtue, we properly become further reacquainted with ourselves. Problem-solving skills build self-determination, such as goal setting, decision-making, and self-advocacy. Maturity, responsibility. Remember, a pessimist sees difficulty in every opportunity, whereas an optimist sees opportunity in every difficulty. The variety of problem-solving processes. We want to identify, set goals, look for alternatives, evaluate, select, explore, and implement. Pay it forward. Self-evaluating self is inspiring. Friends helping friends is informing or informative. Families housing family is enriching / enlightening. Organizations helping organizations is encouraging. Nation helping nations is empowered. As we take the time to meditate, welcome everyone to getting the draws off the gold, rediscovering who you really are. We have a new expressionaire on the line. I like to use the word expressionaire because an expressionaire convert ideas into words and words into meaning and meaning into action. Brother Kenneth Vaughn, would you want to share a little bit about yourself to the other brothers?
Sure. Good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
Yes, I probably been missing a few of these Zoom sessions, but I was excited to get here because myself has been going through some anxiety when myself actually came to Baltimore from DC in 2014, and I wanted to stop drinking. And my thing with the drinking was when I found out, which I'm going on 8 years sober now, I found out I developed anxiety after I stopped drinking. I was like, all these years of things, all the things I've been through, I get this anxiety. So what I've been doing is actually trying to, when he said the meditation part, that meditation actually helps if you do it on a constant basis. You know, some people say, I'm gonna do some meditation today, but if you do it once a week, I don't think that's really strong enough to for you to get in tune with yourself to let it help you. Because one thing that when he put down his sword said that where were the barriers that come on you, and I was wondering where were the barriers before, because I never worried about what was going to happen or if I was going to be good enough to do it, or and it comes, and I don't know where it come from. Maybe it was masked when I was drinking, but now I'm doing the more the meditation, and I'm actually got a good read that I'll share with you guys later, called the Anxiety and Phobia Workbook that I got from off of Amazon. But this anxiety I think it can hit anybody, but I'm trying to deal with it because I'm more of a social person. But when that gets in the way of it, I'm not claiming it. Don't get me wrong, I'm not claiming it, but I know if we deal with the meditation and possibly yoga, if you can get into it, you can get back in tune with yourself. But that's the big thing, getting it back in tune with yourself to know that things are not as worse as you think they are. They're not as bad as you think they are. But we get worked up. Like, I think it's just an opposite of being in depression. Correct me if I'm wrong. Because when a person is depressed, they just, it seems like they're not even motivated to do anything. But on my side, the anxiety is I'm so overworked mentally to do something and want to get things done and wear a lot of hats. I'm used to doing that because I'm more of I think I have different talents and skills in my life that I got to share with people. And then when anxiety jumps in the way, it kind of frustrates me because it kind of cripples me a little bit. So my mission now is to fight through it. So other than that, I think that this is a good learning experience to join these meetings like this, because you can tell me something. You never know who you're going to inspire or you're going to help. So I'm willing to hear anything from you guys or anything you can share with me. So that way we can branch out and we can help more people. We got to keep the circle intact. But anything you got to ask me, just ask me, man. I know I jumped around a little bit. I'm just giving you a little idea.
It's all right, brother.
All right.
Yes, thank you so much, brother, for the motivation as well as the inspiration. We do have a licensed clinician that is part of the gathering. We do have a historian that is a part of the gathering that I know. And we have a brother that deals with spiritual laws and spiritual principles that is a part of the gathering, and see if we could offer some root cause analysis that would help you through the process of what you are experiencing and what you are dealing with when it comes to anxiety. It was something that we touched on last week, and we see that it is very permeating. It has a very strong hold on us as people in the society in which we live. The day's topic it correlates with the previous topics that we discussed last week. Borderline personality disorder and depression disorder. Depression disorder, having episode of psychological depression. The key word is the episode. You know, it's like when you have a series of things that keep occurring, and it has a sudden impact on your life. And if you are unable to deal with it, it gets worse. So we want to be able to give a diagnosis if we can. I am not a doctor, but there is one that is a PhD candidate that he will give a possibly a diagnosis and offer some insight, okay, to what's going on, to what's happening. Paul Thompson will give you something too as well. And so will Marcus saying go for next and changing the narrative, because remember the inner conversations that we have with ourselves creates our circumstances. So borderline disorder is a mental disorder characterized by instability in mood, in behavior and functioning. I'm gonna say this, and then I'm going to open the door, if I may use it. The door's already open, but I'm just going to say this about instability. There is a term in the clinical field, medical field, called a sadist. A sadist. A sadist is one who is very unstable, and in his instability, it makes him to become very aggressive, and some would say so sexually aggressive, which means he or she wants to inflict harm, hurt, and pain on the individual whom he is encountering. The flip side is that we do not want to allow anyone or anything to inflict harm, hurt, and pain on us. So we should not inflict that hurt, harm, and pain on ourselves. It is open for dialogue, discussion, and exchange.
Excellent, excellent. Well, I would like to open this evening with such a hereforto topic on depression and borderline disorders, and kind of lay out a foundation for all of us to really think about, understand, and use a mathematical format and simplicity to really look at mental disorders. And this is Paul Thompson, for those who may not know me. And as Kevin said in introduction, my life represents being a student of the spirit world, the spiritual laws that govern the planet, govern human behavior. And being a student of law, I spent most of my life watching personal interaction with the laws. And so when we say spiritual, universal laws, we're talking about demonstratable law. And so it's very important for us to understand that when things are governed by law, it says that things can be predicted. Because just like your body is under law, the human emotion is governed by law, and it's operating according to that law. Just as water, just as gravity, just as sand. And so two laws that we can talk about in simplicity that we are all interacting with every day is the law on water and gravity daily. And so we don't get too emotional about water or gravity because of our daily interaction. But there are thousands of laws that are in the universe that we're not conscious of, that we're not interacting with on a daily basis, like the law of attraction, or the law of cause and effect, or the law of reason for being, or the law of unity, or the law of clear expression, or the law of abundance, or the law on understanding, or the law on unconditional love. And being a student of these laws, I cannot even begin to express to you what these laws have done in my life, being a student of it. But what I would definitely want to suggest this evening is when I study flow and blockage as it relates to human behavior, it is very, very powerful when we're talking about mental disorders, mental illness. I want to start with laying a mathematical equation for us all. There are basic three things that govern the universe: energy, elements, and matter. And so when we look at energy, elements, and matter, we basically understand life as we understand it in our finite states. What is important for us to understand is that in these finite states, that we are operating through a program. The mind, the human mind is such a powerful, the brain and then the human mind. They're not one and the same, even though in most cases people are understanding them as one and the same. So the brain is a physical thing. The human mind is a spiritual thing. It is operating with a spirit, connecting it to the brain computer. So when we're talking about the matter, we're talking about everything comes from matter that's in the physical realm. In the energy realm, everything comes from spirit. Now, what's so important for us to understand is we've been conditioned all our life to think we have to choose one over the other instead of understanding its true relationship and understanding how to use the true relationship masterfully, with self-discipline or with understanding to accomplish great things in life, to accomplish self-mastery, if you will. So one of the things my journey has taught me is that there's many, 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 many millions and millions of people all over the planet, but very specifically here in the United States, that we really are not in touch with the spirit world from the standpoint of spirits, S-P-I-R-I-T-S, spirits. Now, we look at the alcohol, and the alcohol is called spirits. When we're dealing in spirit, we're dealing in everything that has a living organism is attached to a spirit. but we're not addressing the spirit because we live in a world basically that spirituality is taboo. And let me get into the simple mathematics that I want to lay down. Each and every person on planet Earth that has a ability to breathe is taking a breath, is breathing in and out spirit. In the holy books, referencing the Bible, the King James Bible, when it talks about in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. The Word is an energy vibration that creates life. Now, when we talk about mental disorders, what's so important for us to understand is this. In the spirit world, everybody has a relationship to self. Everybody's connected to themselves. And so the greatest power that we have that's not being taught is when you contract. So I'm going to call this spiritual contracting. What a spiritual contract is three components. Is when you make an offer to yourself, you consider, and then you make an acceptance. 3 stages. Very, very powerful to understand. Now I'm going to show you all how billionaires become billionaires from this simple process. Show you how powerful it is. 3 steps. An offer is made. There's a period of, whether you want to accept the offer or not, and then you either accept the offer or you don't. So if all of us got out of bed this morning, we use that process. At some point, you made an offer to yourself to get up. And at some point, you accept it. Now, it's something as simple as that we probably take for granted because we don't think much about it. But when you look at a multi-billionaire today, he did nothing different than that process. He made an offer to himself, considered, then made an acceptance, and that is considered a contract. So in the business world, that's what makes people successful, is being able to make offers and close the contract, as we do successfully with ourselves every day. Now, why is this so important in such a topic of mental disorders? You say because thought is the beginning of all creation. So this is why it's so important to understand energy vibration. Nothing can come into the physical realm of existence unless it enters through a thought vibration. So when we're talking about understanding energy source, everything in the universe is matter, which is dead. It has no life until there's an energy source that's attached. Spirit that's attached. So this is so important because when we're dealing with these physical entities, and on this physical plane Earth, you have to have one. You can't be on this plane called Earth without a body. But what operates inside this body, from the atoms and the molecules and the cells, all are operating from an energy vibration. Now, let's go back to the foundation of the mathematics and what we're dealing with here. Because people not being taught the spirit world and the resource that lives in us, what is causing these mental disorders is the lack of understanding natural law. Natural law. And when you move away from natural law, you become anxious. You become anticipating. You become disappointed, stressful. Now, some of these things, there's a positive and a negative to it. So it's all not that it's something that's not good. It's, again, the application of it. But what's so important for us to understand is how successful we are. Now, I just finished writing a book that has just come out. And chapter 19 of the book is titled Flow and Blockage. So I want to read a short passage. You are either in flow or you are creating blockage.
Mhm.
You are either in flow or you're creating blockage. Now, let's go back to the principle here of understanding the power we all have to make an offer, consider, and accept the offer. So because we are powerful, because we're manifesting through our energy, you have to be successful every day. And here's what's not being taught. I don't know how many conversations I've had with people over the years, and they'll say, well, my life is this and my life is that. And I'm saying, do you realize how successful you've been in your life? Because think about every time you made yourself an offer and accepted it, you were successful. So what we must understand is that we're creating and manifesting successfully, but we don't understand the law and what it's creating. And so when it creates anxiety, stress, frustration, disappointment, it's like we're trying to put a square into a circle and it ain't working for me, so I'm going to force it. So at some point, I get very, very discouraged. Now, what I lend to my study is one of the greatest things that I believe that's creating a lot of the mental illnesses. The foundation of it is when people are thinking against the nature of themselves. Now, what do I mean by that? Let's look at patience and impatience. The Bible says patience is a virtue. Virtue has to do with morality, excellence in morality, right? Virtues, it's a mathematical equation. Now, when we become impatient, the baby becomes impatient because the baby hasn't learned yet the disciplines. So the baby cries, is hungry, the baby may become impatient, but as we mature and grow, there is a developmental and the nature of the universe or the nature of order. So when you follow the nature of order, you become, and that's what I want to address in a few minutes. Now, let me just read a little more. Flow is the wind blowing, the ray from the sun, cerebral cortex of the brain computer creating awareness. Well, what is blockage? A blockage is spiritual in nature. Often, blockage is a product of matter or carnality thinking. A blockage can be best described as an unrighteous spirit, energy, opposing natural order or flow. Our universe represents flow and blockage, and everything starts from thought. Do you realize the tremendous power of your thinking in flow? The energy source is infinite. So when you think about how successful our ability is to think, there's no limitation on it. You can open your brain computer up, your mind up to the power of that. It's infinite. It's mathematical. Even though these physical bodies are very limited, what we have between these two ears is infinite. You can access things. When we look at mental disorder, what we're talking about is a spirit that we're calling upon that's creating a blockage, and we're unaware of that spirit. Give you an example. If I am desirous of something in the material plane, and I want this thing so bad, this matter, whatever it is, and I am not applying a basic understanding to the process and how to acquire it, I may become very frustrated, very disappointed, very anxious. And the more and more that I'm here, something is going to happen as what's the word I'm looking for? As the respect. And so So everything has an equal and opposite reaction according to what law is that? For every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. One of the science. And so every action is an equal, simple as we talk about gravity or water, there's some type of response that comes from it. And so when you accumulate responses that are disordered, they register somewhere. And so when we look at this powerful medium called consciousness, memory, brain computer, understanding, all the things that are part of this dynamic, we have to be clear that it's registering somewhere and then it begins to take form. When it starts taking form, it has to show up somewhere. And so I just really wanted to lay that to the dialogue in flow and block.
Thank you. Thank you, Brother Paul. Thank you.
Patience.
Yes, there was some patience there. Yes, that's cool. So anyone else would want to elaborate? I know we have Malik and Angelic and Angelique and what is that? Maja.
Probably Media or Maja.
Yes. Right. Anyone else?
Any comments or questions?
Yeah, I was going to give somebody else a chance, though. I did have something I want to touch on, so I just want to give somebody else.
Yes, sir. Go right ahead. Floor is yours. Pardon me, Kevin. That's your
room. Yeah, when you said that, let me go back to my little note here. I had to scribble some stuff down. When you're talking about things that we're taught and we get away from the spirit part of life in so many words. Now, a lot of time, what I'm seeing is, just say when you were raised by your parents and everything, and I think you're more in that, more of a spirit world till you get to being on your own, and then when you get to these worldly things and the competition, it seemed like from when you're very young, you're brought up to compete, and you gotta do this right and be better than this person. And you can see it in anything, in all facets of the world, in sports, even in religion, even in work environments. It's always a competition, and then when you get to a point in your life and say you're really good at something, and then you're like, just say for instance, me in the military, I made rank real fast, and I was 20 years old. I was a sergeant in the Army, and I was really advancing real fast at a young age. And then the drinking came in, and I drank for the next 20 years or more. But I saw ups and downs where I was successful, and then I would lose out, successful and lose out. But I poured into that world of the drinking and get away from the spirituality of myself, that it kind of screwed my life up a little bit. So in that sense, is that compared to what you just delivered to us? Correct me if I'm wrong.
Sir, you're right on point. I mean, the thing is that we're making a lot of unconscious decisions.
Mm-hmm.
And what the spirit world does, it brings an awareness to the choices you're making and the consequences thereof. So at least when you make a choice that may not be in your best interest, you have an awareness of it, and you're not doing it kind of like in a rush to accomplish something. I believe that the greatest challenges that we have is that when we're not tapping into the spiritual relationship that we have with our higher self, we fall victim to unconscious consequences. And so over time, those unattended consequences begin to accumulate. And those things become all kinds of illnesses, all kinds of mental illnesses, all kinds of health issues. And so the preventive approach would be understanding your resource, your powers. And like the young lady I've been mentoring for quite a few years, what I would always say to her is, you have all this information you have that is carnal, worldly. I said, what happens when you have all this information over here spiritually? And now you have two sets of information, which gives you twice as many choices.
Yes.
And so most people believe that I would make better choices. The challenges are faced with, especially when we're young.
Okay.
Gotcha.
Yes. Anyone else? I would like to share something in this wise. When it comes to distorted automatic thoughts, there is a term called judgment focus. You view yourself, others, and events in terms of evaluations as good and bad or superior, inferior, rather than simply describing, accepting, or understanding. You are continually measuring yourself and others according to arbitrary standards and finding that you and others fall short. You are focused on the judgments of others as well as your own judgments of yourself. I didn't perform well in college, or if I take up tennis, I won't do well, or look how successful she is. I am not successful. Judgment focus, distorted automatic thoughts, something we must overcome.
Indeed, indeed. And I think, Brother Kevin, it is one of the biggest challenges that people are struggling with in our society is personal judgment. It's huge, huge, huge. And it causes blockage. It's like a person says, I'm not good enough. I can't do it because of some judgment. Once you're creating the words, again, you're making yourself an offer. So when you mentally accept what you're saying, it's a contract. And that contract is put in force because of the power of your word, your language. And so people who know me really know how I am a stickler about language use, as Brother Kevin is. And so, because my journey has been watching people use words and language, and those who use it as if they can say anything and it doesn't affect anybody, anything. And then those who use it in such a meticulous way, as they're very careful in the words they choose and speak. I've just seen both extremes. And what it does is that you are the first receptor of your words. So your words are attached to spirits in you. The words, your language, what you use. Let me say this. We are all created perfect. And this perfection is based on a mathematical certainty from creation. In mathematics, you must be accurate or perfect in your equations, or the answer is incorrect or incongruent. Mental illness is a product of a spiritual mind energy, attempting to accept a physical reality, matter, as a source. This mathematically will produce a mental imbalance. Now, let me share this. This is some. Now, watch the simplicity of this. Most of us, consciously or unconsciously, have bought into a carnal world, meaning you have the spirit world and then you have the carnal world. You got the physical world, which is matter, and then you have the spiritual world, energy. Mm-hmm. Once we buy into this physical world, we take on a carnal state of consciousness or a carnal state of mind. And I would say to people for many years in doing sessions and classes, I say, I'm speaking to you all based on a spiritual base, but you're hearing me based on your physicality. It's not going to connect. You have to put on a spiritual mind to understand spirituality. If you're listening to me or hearing me in a carnal mindset, you're going to process what I'm saying in a carnal mindset. that is going to create somewhat of a blockage. As people have done for me for years, they'll say, that's crazy. What are you talking about? And I'm saying, well, let's demonstrate some of this so we can really bring it home. So you don't really understand that I'm not talking a foreign language to you. I'm talking you. See, in the spirit world, we all are going to contract because you have to. That's the nature of this source called energy. You have to make yourself an offer and you have to accept it. You have to accept it on some level, right? So you create that contract. When you create that contract with yourself, that's usually called, for most of us, a belief. Good God Almighty. Now, manifesting. The young lady said on the call the other day, she says, I got to learn how to manifest. And I said, I just listened. But the power of manifest is every time we take a thought, because we have thousands of thoughts, hundreds of thoughts that come through our mind. But until you take intent from your being and you place intent to that thought and you put emotion to that thought, you create an idea. That's manifestation. Mm-hmm. How many people have I talked to in my life that say, that ain't real? I don't believe that. See? Because we have not been taught from the law that you don't need something physical in order for this to be manifest. This is physical manifestation. But in the spirit world, which is more real than the physical world, because the physical world cannot exist until the spirit world creates it. So when you think about mental illness, when you see the physical manifestation of the illness, where did it root it? Where was it rooted? Where did it come from? It started in your thoughts. You have the power and you're directing your energy. So where are you directing your energy? I told a story a few weeks ago about my daughter calling me and it kind of got up under my skin. So she called me with anxiety disorder and she says, I'm having an anxiety disorder. I'm going to check myself into the mental institution. And I'm like, woman, are you crazy? I'm like, how you gonna be my daughter saying something crazy like that? So all I basically told her is get the power of now by Eckhart Tolle and listen to it. Because he's going to take you through a series of understanding how to be in the now. Now watch this. And Kevin just hit on it with judgment. What has to take place for a person to go into a certain state? You have to take your mind from the present where all your power source is, and you have to travel somewhere in the past, connect yourself to some form of judgment to create the anxiety in which you experience. But most people are not conscious that they're doing that. So they may be looking and saying, well, I'm having all these attacks and all that, but what is it connected to? Your thinking is the greatest resource that we all have. Your thoughts and your feelings are your greatest inventory. Always has been, always will be. So you have to know your inventory. So when you take in a lot of information and you don't inventory that information, then it's going to play out somewhere in your energy fields because you're taking it in. So you have the power to regulate your environment, what you take in, what you keep, what you let go of. And so for me, I don't take in anything that is contrary to righteousness. Why? It's because I'm dealing with nature. So anything that's not dealing with righteousness is not a part of my makeup. So when I take it on and in, I should be looking for some type of response from it. It's because it's not going to flow with my energy. And so we have to really understand when we're talking about perfection, mathematics.
Brother,
you hear people say all the time,
Brother Paul.
well, nobody's perfect. I'm not perfect. Nobody's perfect.
Brother Paul.
Somebody say something?
How you doing?
Yes, sir.
Can I ask you a question?
Fine, brother.
How does one know if they're spiritual? And they're meeting what you're calling, if they're meeting what you're speaking to. How does one know they're doing that? Do they have to be conscious of it?
I would say that everybody's spiritual and conscious that they're spiritual. The question is, are they acknowledging their spirituality? Because you're dealing with a spirit world internally. So I don't see how a person would not know they have. Now, when we say, are they spiritual? Of course, that's based on choices that people are making. Is because if you don't want to be spiritual, if you relate it to religion, my theory on that, brother, is this: that a lot of people are looking at religion and spirituality as one and the same, and they run from religion, so they run from spirituality. That's pretty much what I've experienced in the journey. But I believe when you're young, as Brother Vaughn was saying, that we know we're spiritual when we're 2 and 3 and 4, because we're interacting in the spirit and we're conscious of it. It's just at some point, I believe we trade that in for more material beliefs, more matter, and then we become more substantive in thinking this physical world is real and the spiritual world isn't real because we relate it to religion. That's kind of what I've seen a lot of.
Okay. So when you say the mental illness manifests in the physical, what are you saying?
I'm saying perception of one's judgment. The 5th law that governs the planet is self-image. So what we all hold in our energy vibration is a self-perception. So if I don't see myself valuable, if I don't see myself important, if I don't see myself with substance connected to a divine source, I see myself as inferior, less than, inferior to, that all has to be based on a material world. That can't be based on spirit, because spirit has no concept of that, has no consciousness of that.
With mental illness.
Yes. That's what I'm talking about.
So fear is physical.
Can be. It's an energy source.
Okay.
But you have to attach it to something when you create fear. Fear is not operating by itself. It's a energy. So when we fear something, there has to be something physical connected to it.
Okay. So you're saying that there's something physical that's causing that feeling.
That fear.
Okay.
In self-image. In self-image.
Now, I think that much of what you're saying is good for some. I just challenge it a bit, whether it's the end all be all.
I got you.
You know, because to me, to some degree, it becomes a bit judgmental. And the reason what I mean by that is I think there's multiple ways to reach a destination. So and I'm including your route as one of those ways. I think there's people who are mentally healthy. I'm not gonna say think. I'm gonna say I know. I know there's people mentally healthy who don't ascribe to any spirituality, any system, any religion. I can differentiate the two, just to be clear. And there's various definitions of spirituality and religion. And some people would say religion is their path to spirituality. So, you know, it's multiple ways, right? Some people say that you just practice in the song and dance when you go and you do some rituals and you're not really getting to that spiritual level, that connection with God, so, or the universe or what have you, right? So people have all types of ways of all different types of ideas of what spirituality is. But I mean, when we talk about the mind and we talk about the mind turning on itself, but so if the mind is turning on itself, that would be if the mind is what you say it is in the spirit, then that's spiritual warfare possibly.
Yeah, it is.
So I can agree with that, but I would suggest that there's people out here who don't have to don't believe in anything, won't acknowledge being spiritual, won't acknowledge any of these things, and are totally mentally well off. I don't think, yeah, that's pretty much what I have to say.
Well, just look at that. That's really interesting. That's a really interesting concept, because what that says to me is If they're in this physical body, they're operating successfully through making offers to themselves and accepting them, whatever they believe. And if they are using a source of energy, which comes from the source of infinite, then it makes sense. It's because they're using the spirit. So you can't get around, again, you can't get around energy. Energy is everything. There is no life without an energy source.
I think I agree. I think I agree with that.
Yeah.
I think the only thing I would say is everybody doesn't choose to use the same terms.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, some people might not call it spirituality.
Oh, absolutely. No.
Yeah.
Well, that's just semantics, because you remember, for years I watched people in religion say the exact same thing, but because of barriers of not understanding the language. Like when somebody's saying Allah, it's just a word for God in Arabic. When somebody says Muslim, one who's born to submit to God. So, and then you got people who are Christian saying, well, I don't like these people because they don't believe in this and that. It's like you're saying the exact same thing. It differentiates in certain areas, but really the biggest challenge for most people is the language use, which is how people experience things.
You know, and one of my greatest, let's say, if I could say, one of my greatest, I can't even put in a word right now, but what I'll say is my greatest concerns.
Yeah.
Or is that many of us who identify as spiritual tend to, from my standpoint, my experience, be those who also have a lot of what we call mental disorder. There's a serious connection between certain disorders and also speaking very spiritual language, which becomes concerning to me at times, because it's very difficult to reach somebody when they believe is the universal law, or it's godly ordained, or what have you. And I'm not even talking about religion. I'm talking about what they call spirituality. So again, I don't think things are as simple as using terms of just spirituality. I do agree with you, though. It makes a lot of sense when you say blockages and flow. That does tend to be one of the major issues that most of us deal with when we talk about any of these things, as you say, trauma. Even today's topic, when we speak to borderline personality disorder, and we speak to how many times that borderline personality disorder is a set of symptoms that really, for the most part, I wouldn't say it comes from your thought. I would disagree with that. I think that, you know, that your thoughts are now, your mind is now turning on itself, because in essence, at one point in time, those thoughts and that mind was serving you as a survival mechanism. But now you're stuck in that cycle where it's not working anymore, which I would call the blockage. So I would agree with that. So now you have to learn to move past that, because you're no longer in that, you may not be in that state where you need to use those tools of survival. And now is important to use what you call higher thought, higher reasoning, compassion, empathy, all these type of things. But it's very difficult to do that when you are in these emotional states, where you see threat when there's no threat, or the threat is not as big or as pervasive as you think it is. And when we talk about depression, depression tends to be when one looks back and they kind of ruminate, which is, you know, get stuck on something, and they continue to get stuck on whatever point that is, and then start creating things in their minds which don't exist, you know, again, I guess if I'm utilizing your terminology, I would say spiritual warfare, but at that time you're getting your ass kicked, you know, excuse my language. But yeah, I mean, I can go with the language. I just think that sometimes what it does is it comes across, it can come across as you have to be able to speak the language that Brother Paul speaks in order to be healthy.
No, not
I'm
at
not
all.
saying that's what you're
Yeah.
suggesting, but
Yeah.
I think those who are listening, you know, may feel like I need to figure out, because that's what most people I've come across, mental health or not, they tend to be on a journey and they're trying to find them, and they're trying to find the right spiritual system and not really tap into themselves as much, or find the right guru but not tap into themselves. Or, you know, so I'm not really big on uh 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 I think I just like to make it clear that there's no one way of doing things. And I don't have to use the word spirituality ever and be mentally healthy.
Yeah. Well, and you're making great points first, brother. For me, I'm obviously using the language in which I've been exposed to. And so the more mature I become, the more exposed I become, I learn people use language accordingly to their environment, to their culture, to their language use, of what they spoke. And so, yes, there are many people who deal with spirituality in many forms of language use. For me, I'm just trying to get clear, make things as clear as I can for people to understand why they are not accessing their pure potentiality, their abundance. And so the words that I choose are that which I've learned from being in this environment and how to express it in the most effective way that hopefully people get what I'm saying. Because for me, everybody's on their own journey to make known the unknown of their journey. Everybody has something in them that makes them unique, and they're here to express it at their highest vibration. And so what my role is that I feel is just helping them to tap into that. And so I just try to use language that is the simplest to help people to understand that I see all this in terms of mathematics. We all are equations. And the more we need to add what we have missing, say, if there's something missing to the equation, is what I feel that I'm able to assist people with, is because a lot of times over years of doing this work, people will say to me, wow, I never looked at it like that. So I find the more information that I have and able to express it in ways that give people different perspectives, eventually something clicks. Because blockage is also a part of the belief system where we say, this is what it is. This is how it is. And so the environment molds and shapes us, and the carnality can make us think that there's nothing outside of this. And so for me, because of my spirit, my experience being vast from beyond this physical, I already know with mathematical certainty that this ain't it. This is not total. This is not the totality of the equation. I mean, that's all I'm basically saying in all my different ways.
Okay.
Yes. Anyone else?
Yes, I'm
Brother
sorry.
Sankofa? Thank you.
Peace, everyone.
Go ahead, bro.
I think that with one of the things that I took from what Brother Paul said was understanding how successful we are and what we are accomplishing. Understand how successful we are and what we're accomplishing. As I'm processing the conversation, the discussion right now, I'm thinking about pressure and all of the pressures that a lot of times individuals, people may just have on themselves, and the pressure to live up to certain expectations, to certain standards that have been set. So the other day I was trying to get my workout on. You know, I was doing some push-ups and stuff like that. And I wanted to exceed the number 20. I wanted to drop and do 20 consecutively without falling off the wagon, without being able to go through it. And you know, I did maybe one in 20, might have did 21. So, you know, as soon as I'm finished, I see this thing where there's like a push-up challenge and people are doing push-ups 100, 150, you know, they going. And I'm sitting there like, well, dang, they over there busting them out. I just did 21. I'm proud of my 21. Like, dang, they over there getting it cracking. And so that success that I just had, even though it was one push-up more than I initially set out, you know, to do, here is, you know, the others over here who have done all of these push-ups. So I said that, I use that as an example that a lot of times, you know, Brother Kevin mentioned comparison. It's so easy to fall into the trap, consciously or even unconsciously, about trying to compare ourselves to somebody else. Oh, somebody on social media put out there that they're in a relationship. Oh, somebody got a new car. Somebody wrote a book. Somebody just got a promotion or whatever the case is. And you know, these things can really make it as such where we could beat ourselves up because we are not where we feel we should be based on these expectations and based on this sense of being perfect. And I mean, you don't have to look far. I mean, you could look in every direction, and there's always trying to sell something to you about how you're not good enough. About, you know, so the fact that, you know, we are imperfectly perfect, I agree with that. But I could turn on the TV right now and find a commercial that'll tell you all the 1,000,001 reasons why you're not good enough, why you need to get this, why you need to do that. And so, you know, I would say that self-talk, the things we feed our minds and the things we feed our brains, a lot of times it's from a deficit perspective. You know, I can't do this, I'm inadequate, I can't measure up to this, I can't live to this. And so there is something called self-compassion where we can be able to check that and be aware of that and be mindful of that and reframe the narratives in our own minds. And because it's really difficult to live up to some of these expectations and to some of these standards, whether it's our own imposed standards or living up to somebody else's expectations and standards that they put on us. And one of the things I realize is a lot of times the people or the expectations that we're trying to fit, the boxes that we're trying to fit in, though the box that is prescribed or those that have put these expectations out there, they, you know, they're coming from a lot of times a distorted from a distorted place in their own right. And so that's very, I think that's something that is significant in this conversation. Comparing ourselves to other people who a lot of times we don't know their story, we don't know their situation, we don't know their background, we don't know their circumstance. So we compare based on a very surface level of information that we have. And so just being enjoying our victories and knowing that what's for us is for us, and that we all have different paths that we're walking on. And I also think, and I think this has been said before as well too, but being able to explore what has happened. You know, I think it might have been Minister Sardi that was talking about the blockage and you know, how being able to get stuck. And so being able to process that, being able to deconstruct that, and being able to you know, revisit that, not stay there, but at least be able to go back and see where did things go left, what has happened, you know, what is the root, you know. And I think that is something that can help us along the journey. But comparisons are huge. Comparisons are major, and I think that that anxiety to perform, and you know, we're always, you know, whether we're performing at the job or performing in the community or performing, trying to be the best version of ourselves, our family, whatever the case may be, but trying to live up to certain standards. And a lot of times it might not, and that's whether it's for us or to please and look a certain way and to maintain a certain status for other people. So.
Absolutely.
Thank you. I would like to share something too, and it's wise. Thank y'all for this expression, if I may, because I saw Brother Vaughn that he had something to share too as well. But we use the term called energy. I mean, spirit and energy. We use it interchangeably. I know I come from substance. And that substance evolved. That substance was a sperm. And in that that sperm, it mixed with the ovum, then it evolved into a greater substance of human being. But there was some energy that took place to make that happen. We were taught that some said that those cells were in competition. No, they were in cooperation. And you get to a point that in that cooperation that you are being pushed in this environment. The environment is the womb. And once you come out of their womb, you come out with a greater substance. But then you come into an environment where they continue to teach you to what? To compete rather than cooperate. Scientists will agree that there is no science without classification. If we look at the term, the psychotic person is a person being out of touch with reality. Mm-hmm. That we need to be clear. We want to stay in touch with reality. They have severe malfunctioning disorder. Some think they're above the law. Some suffer from illusions of grandeur. Some equate it to their wealth. Some equate it to what they call consciousness, which some are showed there as the sixth sense. That's the free spirited. That's the free spirited running around without any limitations at all. Just doing things to benefit itself, just to satisfy itself, not to benefit the whole. So we have to come back to reality and deal with the confines of the structure which we are in. Because if there is a soul that is housed in our body, it is confined in there, which means there is structure there. So in all that we do and say, we must have order and we must have structure. So when it comes to major depression, when it comes to major depression, this psychological or this episodes of keep doing things over and over and over again, this psychological depression, there must be as what's the brother talk about the soul, brother Naim Akbar, talking about the psychology associated with the soul. There must be a disease in the soul. And what is the soul? Is the soul the freedom of the associated with the bar that have wings to be able to fly, to be able to soar, that freedom. And now when we think of freedom, we're talking about free your dome, the way and the manner in which you think. So we must structure ourselves in a way, and we get to a point in our lives that we must stay in tune or in touch with this reality. And I want to say one more thing. I want to talk about a neurotic person has very good contact with reality, but is afflicted by it. He or she may feel he is awkward in this reality. And if he or she feels awkward in this reality, they will do things to try to play a part and be accepted in this reality. And I want to say this too. I keep emphasis on the word of reality, so we stay in tune, in touch with reality when it comes to depression and borderline disorder. Because when we cross the line and living out of this reality, we become very delusional and we become very narcissistic, and it takes on a form of personality worship. And then people start worshiping you and your personality. And if any of us have some esoteric knowledge on things, and we all do not have any esoteric knowledge on anything, because no one has a monopoly on intelligence. So we must come to the point and deal with this reality. Now, how do we do it? I say that we must strengthen our retention. And when we strengthen our retention, we strengthen our resolve. And when we strengthen our resolve, we find restraint. And when we find restraint, we remain in touch with this living reality called planet Earth. Anything one wants to share?
I just had one thing. It's a little bit off subject, but not really. I think it relates. Now I'm just asking about myself, which I wonder if anybody can relate to it. Now, even being through dealing with myself with anxiety, but I've had a little depression in the past, but I've never really been to the depression thing, because I'm always trying to be like a more well-rounded. I always try to know some of this, do some of that. And that's just how I was raised. So I'm always trying to, like my man said, he just read the book he wrote. I'm in the process of doing that, but I had to ignore the anxiety and just go ahead and do what I had to do. Now, let me ask you this: being able to relate to different people, just like, I don't care what your status is or whatever, and being able to connect with people just in a room. I don't even know if you're a college scholar or you're somebody that don't have no education, or you're a professor. Being able to relate to people, is that in an easy way? Because I find that exciting, and I really get in touch like this. I was excited to get to this the Zoom session, to get you guys' thoughts and everything. Is that more of a spiritual connection, you think, or is that just a strong pursuance of humanity? You know, what is that? Is that, I don't know if y'all understand where I'm coming from, but is that
I understand exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, what is that? Because I find that exciting to.
Are you familiar with numerology?
Say again?
Are you familiar with numerology?
Somewhat, yes, sir.
The characters of our name. See, when we go back again to energy, energy is so much more than we're being taught. And so everything carries a certain frequency. Everything has vibratory energy in it. So letters are connected to numbers. So your letters in your name are all connected to a numerical frequency. So in the spirit world, because everything is energy, everything is connected. Everything is relative in the spirit world. And see, again, if we're taught from the laws, how we're getting caught up in a lot of the physicalness of this world probably would not happen. But because we're not taught these things, we live in a world that is making us at odds with each other. We're in a world that's creating division, that's creating people to, like I once heard a European guy say on television, he goes, well, humanity came to this plane to not get along with each other. And I'm saying, huh? I'm saying to myself, where do you get that from? Are you talking about you as a Caucasian person, that you came here not to get along? And so there is a relationship. It's like if I pick up a cricket, a bug, something, an insect or an animal, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to look at its relationship to me. I'm going to look at it and look at what it has that I have, because we're all here to make known the unknown. So when we realize that there's always a connection and you work from that, you'll find a connection. But if you have in your mind to look for what you're different at, you'll find that. And so it's always relationship. When we look at the word relationship, everything we do on this plane called Earth, we do for that purpose. It's about it's relationship, relate. Everything is for that. And so certain, and the point I was sharing with you, Brother Kenneth, on that question is that there's certain energies that are much more interactive with people than others. There's certain energies that are less interactive with people. Like, for example, if you find somebody with an L in their name, a U in their name, or a C in their name, and in what we call in a key position, they're going to be, and more than likely, some of the most friendlier people on the planet. Very loving, caring, joyful. If you find somebody that doesn't have any of those letters, they may be very distant from people. So everything is connected through a vibration, and we're operating out of these frequencies because it's who we are. How we mold them and shape them comes through the environment, and our intentions drive them. So I call that CEI, our character, our environment, and our intentions. And so the more that we are aware, it helps us to use the resources that we are, that are in us, much more effective. And so, like, if I looked at your name says you have a very interesting life, because your K and your V are the first letters of your name, which are the highest two vibrations in the universe. So that says you're picking up information that's on a whole different plane. And so you've gone through a journey where you've been very misunderstood by others. So everything is already speaking. And then your style of learning in school was very different and unique because you have the E in the first vowel of your first name. So which means is you have the intelligence where you're absorbing information without even focusing on it. So everything is speaking. It's everything.
I didn't mean to cut you off, but
yes, sir.
It's funny you said that, because do you know I rarely took books home when I was in school, and I was a B student without even trying. I'm not tooting my horn, but it's just the fact that you said that, because my mom used to always ask, why don't you ever bring books home? I say I get it in the class. Well, I already get it in the class. I listen to the professor.
Yeah,
and that's where how I learn, But I mean, you probably could be an A student if you studied more. Don't get me wrong.
Your basic energy says that you weren't challenged enough, and so therefore you probably got bored at some point. That's what your energy is saying.
You like you know me already.
But notice what he said, and it's probably something that you and him can discuss offline.
Yeah.
But yes, notice that he says that your basic energy that he said, because there are people who go to school and it doesn't challenge them as well, without that basic energy as Brother Paul has just shared. And but we want to continue to get the Dross off the goal, and rediscovering who you really are. And we want to somewhat bring this thing to a close, if we may, with any closing remarks from each and every one that is assembled here today. Any closing remark, Brother Sankofa?
I really don't know, to be honest, what to say.
That's good. That's good. Yeah.
I'm not sure what to think. I think, and I'll just, once again, just reiterate what I already said. The ultimate aim. I think there's a lot of good that can come from looking inward and being the best version of you that you can be. We can gain inspiration from other people, but when we try to measure up to others based on unrealistic expectations or live up to certain expectations that might not be realistic, it can lead to some difficulties and some challenges. And the only other thing I'd say is, once again, to be able to look at what has happened leading up to where you are or to where we are, and it can be difficult processing what has happened for a lot of different reasons, and continue to stay on the path. So I'll just leave it at that. Thanks, everybody. Glad to have been able to contribute again.
Thank you. Brother Vaughn, you'd like to share anything in closing?
One question. If someone were to call you and was in a depressed state and ask you or say to you, I'm so depressed, I don't know what to do, what words would you have to present them? What would you say to them?
For me?
Is that
No.
for everybody, or is that for me? Who's that for?
Oh, I'm sorry, not you. Like, just say for me. Say if somebody called me or called you, and they were in a depressed state, what would you say to them to lift them, or what would you suggest to them?
Are you putting that question out for everybody, or you?
Yes, I'm sorry, for everybody. Yes, for anybody that has some feedback.
For me, people that I've actually dealt with who called me about being depressed, what I do is basically help people to internalize the contracts that they've created, because you're manifesting your creation through energy vibration. And because we don't physically see it, we think that it's not real. And that's so far from the truth. All reality is created through thought. And so the physical manifestation is just a different level of it. So when a person is saying, I'm depressed, they're creating it as they're speaking it. Mm-hmm. 30 years ago, people didn't recognize depression as we use the terminology today, and bipolar and many other things. Now, when you give a label to something, you also give the person the ability to use it. If they didn't know it exists, like in India, for many years, there was no word for lie. I'm not sure still if it's a word for lie in India or not. But if you are not taught about a lie, you don't know how to do it. Mm-hmm. So language has a lot to do with being able to create things and make people see it or feel it or believe in it that may not exist. And so if a person says, I'm so depressed, that's a part of the creation of it, because your words, you're making yourself an offer. And when you accept that you're so depressed, you have now just created it. Yeah. Very important to understand.
Let me say this. Most people, when they're depressed, they come to you, they won't say I'm depressed. They just won't do that because they don't even know what that thing is that they're feeling. You know, most people, if you ask them, are you depressed? They'll say no. They'll say no. You say, do you feel hopeless? They say, maybe yes, maybe no. Do you feel down? Maybe. But I just want to, getting back to the point of getting the dross off the goal. I think we really have to look at mental illness as a real thing, or depression is a real thing, or anxiety is a real thing. People feel these things before there were words for them. Now, there are some things that was created and people fighting and debate about today, even like multiple personalities, what is called dissociative personality disorder. But there is a reality that I'll be remiss if I don't say it. It's a stigma for mental illness in our community, or let's say it's a stigma just to, I don't even want to say the word mental illness. I just want to say for these struggles, let's say that. But let's say these, whatever you want to call it, they're real. Let's say that. I just want to, you know, I've read the scholars, I've experienced all people's perspectives from spiritualists to materialists, you know, and everywhere in between. And the reality is these things exist, and I know it. And I know it doesn't have anything to do with somebody's word being, I'm depressed, because half the people don't even know the word. They know the word, but they don't know that they're in that state until you tell them this is depression. And they say, huh?
Well,
And
let me say this on that note, because that's real good. We should have started this an hour ago.
We're gonna bring things to a close too, Paul. Paul, just be clear. We're gonna bring things to a close, brother.
Okay, well, I'll let it go to another time.
So the whole idea of being because the thing is too much of this going on in our community where we act like this ain't working, and to act like we can spiritualize it away, which is a part of the process. You don't get it twisted, but we need more help than Edward Tully. We need more help than Sagaru. They can help, believe it. I would tell you that they're great as it pertains to mindfulness, and mindfulness is something that can really help you, that clinicians and spiritualists and all the like practice. But something happened. Okay. But I just am a little dismayed by material is real. It's not the spiritual is real, or what we call the spiritual. It's just a word of things we don't understand. Things is greater than us that we probably will never understand. And I think to really connect with what we call spiritual is to admit that we don't know. We don't know. And we can utilize all types of formulas and things and not call it a religion, but it is religion. A lot of these things that we're saying just isn't factual. And what I mean by that is, as Brother Kevin and Brother Paul was speaking about earlier, as far as, you know, if you look at somebody's numerology or you look at somebody's sign, and I tell you something about your sign, somebody else, I can read that to them and they're going to believe that's them too. So is it, you know, if somebody told me something like, well, you know what, you didn't pay attention, but you learned, I'll say, you know what, or I'll find something. But what I'm saying is the position of the lettering in your name, no, that's not it. I'm sorry, because I have people coming to my practice every day who believe these things. If it worked for them, that's fine. But the problem is when it doesn't work for them, they come in and they don't know what to do, and they feel even more down. If it works for you, it's fine. But when it doesn't work, when you spiritual bypass and act as if we have this greater power than we truly do, there's some beautiful things in our systems, but they come up short many times if we're not balanced.
Yeah.
So again, I suggest see a clinician, a spiritual clinician, or see somebody who's a wise person who is grounded. Getting the dross off the goal pole, these disorders are real. I see it every day. And it's not as simple as giving somebody a DVD and saying it's going to go away. It's not as easy as saying tap into your higher self. If it was just that easy, We all be zoomed up out here like Scotty. It's not that easy. We have to go through a process and work through what Brother Paul is speaking about, as far as being able to get unstuck. And lots of times we go and tap into what we call spiritual because we just avoiding spiritual bypassing. Peace.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes. Yes. My closing remarks. Thank you all for being a part of this dialogue, discussion, exchange, and Brother Malik and Angelique. Yes, this will be a replay for you. Thank you for coming on board. I don't know if you two have anything you would like to share, Malik and Angelique.
Greetings, everyone. I do. How are you all tonight?
That's great.
Thank you, Mr. Paul, for inviting us out tonight. I really needed this information. I found it kind of synchronistic. Maybe about two days ago, I had a question about mental warfare and the parallels between spiritual gifts and mental health. So thank you for pulling our coattail and bringing us in. I'm looking forward to hearing more and replaying this and just trying to really grow. So thank you all.
Thank you. They say thanks for sharing. Yes. Closing remarks. Yeah, Brother Vaughn, man, stop procrastinating, make it happen. But listen, stop procrastinating. But there is a term called distorted automatic thought. Inability to confirm. You reject any evidence or arguments that might contradict your negative thoughts. For example, when you have the thought, I am unlovable, you reject as irrelevant any evidence that people, like you. Consequently, your thought cannot be refuted. That's not the real issue. There are deeper problems. There are other factors. So there are deeper problems and other factors that we have to deal with when it comes to what term mental illness or getting the dross off the goal, rediscovering who you really are. And getting the dross off the goal is dealing with one's feelings, one's emotions, one's thoughts, one's attitude, one's language, and one's actions/activity. I've learned this in being distressed. Cognitive behavior, emotional distress, dialectical behavior, emotional distress, interpersonal behavior, emotional distress, family behavior, emotional distress, individual behavior, emotional distress. Thank you for being a part of getting the dross off the goal, rediscovering who you really are. We will do another gathering on the 16th, and I can't recall what we're going to talk about. Do anyone you all know? You have the flyer? I can't remember. I don't know everything.
Let's see if I can pull it up real quick.
Hey, Brother Kevin, while you getting that together, I just wanted to say that's being a human, Brother Vaughn. Tapping into where we all are humans, no matter what our titles are.
Yeah.
That's being human. That's being secure in yourself, that you know that you are no less than no matter where you are, where somebody else is, we are human.
Yes, sir. Appreciate it.
That's for sure.
I could read what we're talking about next.
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Personality disorder and autism spectrum.
Wow.
Wednesday, June 16th. Personality disorders and autism spectrum.
Yes, yes, there it is. You heard it from the historian himself.
Dug in the archives.
Yeah, I know.
Archival research I saw put out there.
Hey, as the one doing like, listen, but as they say in Japanese, assuming my sin, that means I appreciate you all. And want to thank you, man. Yeah. It was grand. So thank you so much. Hey, Paul, stop hijacking everything, man. You my man. You my man. Well, I appreciate you. But we're getting the draws off the goal.
Yes, sir.
Rediscovering
Yes, sir.
who we really are. And
Yes, sir.
bless you all. And thank you. I really mean it from the bottom of my heart. Other than that, thank you. And we'll talk to you and we'll see you next time. Power be unto you all.
Peace.
Yeah, all right.